Okay, everyone, as you're getting in, we'll get started in about 2 minutes. So make yourself at home and you can relax. Okay, everyone, we're going to get started. I'd like to start by saying good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar on leading to create a PBL culture. I am Dave Reese, and I'm the Chief Academic Officer for Defined, and I'm super excited to host today's webinar. We have over 1,000 registrants today and an amazing group of leaders who are here with us. Before we begin, now's a good time to review some of the technical aspects of today's presentation. I'd ask you to please check your audio settings on your computer, as well as your speaker volume, if you are having any audio trouble at all. To submit a question for our speakers, so they can consider answering them during the question and answer session, please type them in the chat box. We will try to get to as many questions as we can at the end of the session. Please also feel free to use the chat box for any conversation or perhaps back and forth. Finally, an on-demand archive of today's presentation will be available online in the next 24 hours. It will be emailed to all registrants and posted on our site on our resources page. Also, all live viewers will receive a certificate of attendance for joining with us today. So with that said, let's get started. I'd like to start by introducing our presenters. First, I would like to introduce Dr. Simone Charles. Give us a wave, Simone. She has been a committed educator for close to 30 years, and her achievements include serving as a Spanish language, bilingual and primary language classroom teacher, mentor teacher, grade level chair, and demonstration and mentor teacher. Simone is currently a high school principal in Los Angeles and the ACSA Region 16 state member representative on the Equity Committee and serves as the ACSA Region 16 Cultural Proficiency Director. Working on educational committees and championing students is illustrative of the core beliefs and values Simone holds and is part of her life's work as an educator and advocate for children. Next is Ms. Ellie Faust. Good wave, Ellie. Ellie has been an educator for more than 20 years. Ellie has created and taught a STEAM interdisciplinary-based curriculum for middle schoolers. She has delved into teaching high school AP environmental science and chemistry within a competency-based design thinking high school. She has established practical ways to successfully incorporate technology within a PBL context and coached and led professional development around how to effectively integrate PBL into K-12 classrooms. Her latest adventure is as the Dean of Instruction at an urban middle school. And finally, Dr. Gina Olabunaga. How'd I do, Gina? Okay? All right. Is a professional learning designer and facilitator for K-12 educators. Her areas of expertise include project-based learning, social and emotional learning, and other constructivist practices. Her professional life has been an extension of her doctoral study on effective professional learning. Gina previously oversaw the development of project-based learning content and professional learning services for teachers, leaders, and coaches at an industry-leading nonprofit. You can find Gina at appliedcoaching.org. Thank you all very much for joining with us today. We're excited to have you. So with that said, we wanted to have a guiding question to drive our work. So what we're looking at today is what needs to be in place in order to have a thriving PBL school and culture. Hopefully by the end of our session today, we will have begun to answer that question, and hopefully more than just begun. So what we'd like to do to begin, in the words of Jay McTighe, is to begin with the end in mind. So Gina, what I'd like to ask you is if you could talk to us about the strategies and approaches for leading. But before we do that, we need to know, what is high quality project-based learning?
Yes, let's get into it. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're going to start with a prompt for you to share in the chat. What made learning meaningful for you as a student? Take a moment to connect with that, and please share a word, a phrase, a sentence in the chat. We'd love to get a sense of what comes up for you when you hear that prompt. So we'll take a moment. And by the way, this is an international crowd today, y'all. This is really exciting. I wonder who would win the farthest from Connecticut award today. Okay, connection to real world, relevant. Oh, wow, this is moving very quickly. Story-based, real life, relevant. Oh, this is awesome. Hands-on. This is coming up quite a bit. When I connect with my own experience, purpose, relevance, and doing, connections, fun. We should have fun in learning, y'all. Yes. All right, topics of interest, opportunities to be creative, doing, academic discourse, beautiful, authentic, respects my own experiences. There's no right or wrong answer. Beautiful. Thank you. So Dave, will you switch to the next slide for me, please? So I think this might align with what you all are connecting with. I want to present to you two examples, and then I'm going to talk about the framework for high quality project-based learning. So here's a math example. On the left, on your left, you're going to see a project. And this is, so imagine students are doing a project. They're learning about geometry concepts. At the end of the unit, they create a layout for a garden design, applying the concepts that they've learned. And over on the right, HQ PBL, here's the difference between a project and project-based learning. There's an empty lot near the school. Students are tasked with creating a plan for a community garden space. They will present their ideas to the city council. In order to create their plan, students learn and apply their knowledge of geometric concepts. So take a moment to notice the difference between those two examples. Projects are awesome, and the work that we are trying to do is move schools towards high quality project-based learning. What are some of the, if you feel so moved, what are some of the things that you notice? What are some of the features that you notice that are different in HQ PBL versus projects? And you can contribute in the chat. Okay, there's a story, application to real world. Yes, there's an authentic audience. There's a local connection. There's some kind of problem to be solved. They're creating. There's buy-in. There's a purpose. There's a clear goal. All right. The project is the motivator. And again, doing. So some of the things I'm seeing actually reflect experiences that came up for you all when you think about what was meaningful to you as a learner. Thank you. Dave, will you turn to the next slide for us? So as you have pointed out, projects tend to be where the product happens at the end. So you get to the end of learning and it's like, show me what you can do. In project-based learning, the product drives the process. That intellectual challenge, that problem to solve is what's going to move the learning forward and to give it context and help create buy-in for young people. Dave, next slide. Now, high quality project-based learning is a 6 criteria framework that outlines the student experience for what young people should be experiencing. There are different frameworks out there that articulate how teachers design. This one is really valuable because it articulates what students should be experiencing. Next slide. So we're going to go through these one by one. The first one, where we begin, is intellectual challenge and accomplishment. So this is what this means is students are learning deeply, they're thinking critically and striving for excellence. So some of the features of this include this learning happens over an extended period of time. It is connected to the disciplines that you teach. This is not separate PBL time, but this is rather the way that your core content is taught. Teachers are leveraging research-based instruction to support this practice. So differentiation, making sure that learning is appropriately leveled for students, thinking about zone of proximal development, that we're leveraging social and emotional learning practices to help students do this work. They are producing their highest quality work, and this is always with the guidance and support of the teacher. Now, this does not mean that the teacher knows everything, but the teacher is helping to be the sage, the guide on the side, not the sage on the stage. Next slide, please, Dave. The next component is authenticity, which came up a lot in the chat around work that is meaningful to young people. So in high quality project-based learning, we want students working on projects that are meaningful and relevant to their culture, to their lives, and to their future. So some of the features of that is designing a project opportunity that has impact and connection for students themselves or for others. That they're leveraging the tools, techniques, or digital technologies that are relevant to the discipline, to the problem that they're trying to solve beyond the classroom. And that students have some choice in that in terms of what topics they're exploring, what problems that they're solving, what activities they're engaging in, and then what products they may or may not be developing. There's some nuance to all of that, but those are some of the features of authenticity. Dave, can you turn to the next one? Thank you. So public product, it's a big deal in project-based learning because you got to make something. And so in high quality project-based learning, students' work is publicly displayed, it is discussed, it is critiqued. It is not something that just lives on the bulletin board and disappears at the end of the semester. The features of a high quality public product include students are sharing their work in progress, they are exhibiting their work to an audience, and that they are receiving feedback, that they have multiple opportunities to improve and refine as they move through the process. This includes dialoguing with other individuals beyond peers, so who are outside experts or other folks that can come in and provide feedback on that work. Next, please. All right, collaboration is a critical component of project-based learning. We want to move students out of these individual silos for learning and move into this collaborative, interdependent space. So collaboration does refer both to the process and the way that learning happens. So in high quality project-based learning, students are collaborating with peers in person or online and receiving guidance from adult mentors and experts. So some of the features are you do want young people collaborating in teams to complete complex tasks. How to manage teams, how to make sure that work is shared equitably is one of those nuanced pieces of project-based learning that you can learn more about later. Another feature is that students are learning the skills for effective team membership and leadership. And we want to call out team membership because not everybody can be a leader, but everybody also is a leader, right? So figuring out how to follow someone's lead and also collaborate in like a distributed workspace way. And then lastly, we want young people to be collaborating beyond just peers. So are there adult mentors, experts, community members, businesses or organizations that can be a part of the project to provide guidance, input, resources for learning? Next slide. Project management. So if you are doing a project, you got to manage it. There are a lot of moving parts in project-based learning, and because it is a learner-centered approach, it is a shared partnership between teacher and student. They need to learn the skills to be able to manage their work and their learning. So in high quality project-based learning, students use a project management process that enables them to proceed effectively from the start of the project to the end. So students need to be explicitly taught how to manage themselves and their teams. This includes gathering and practicing with different project management processes, tools, and strategies. There are lots to choose from. Students should be exploring different ones to see what fits. Different projects are going to call for different types of management strategies. And then this is a unique feature I find of high quality project-based learning is they also encourage design thinking to be part of the project management process. So how are we, another term for this is a human-centered design process. So it begins with how are we empathizing with the needs of the user or the people who are affected by the problem I'm trying to solve. And then they move through a design process to define the problem, come up with ideas around it, prototype, and then go out and test it to see that it's going to be viable for the people who need it most. So that's a really cool feature of high quality project-based learning. And then the last slide, reflection. So reflection may come at the end, but this is actually a process that happens from the beginning of a project to the end, and it can happen at any moment in any way. So we want to encourage young people to be stopping and thinking about what do I know? What do I need to know? And how do I go about getting it, right? How can I connect with peers or teachers or resources that are going to help propel me forward? So some features of reflection are the ability to assess and suggest improvements for self and others. Often that requires the use of some kind of quality tool. So keep that in mind. It's not students just saying, hey, I think you should make it better in this way, but we want to be able to ground that in, well, actually, what is our goal and how do we want to make it better? Another feature is making sure that students are reflecting specifically on academic content, concepts, and success skills. That it isn't, so we want students thinking about their feeling, their affective experience. That's not explicitly articulated here in this framework. I'll make a pitch for it now. I think my colleagues would agree. But we definitely want them stopping and thinking about what am I learning? How does this relate to the discipline? How does this relate to my skills? What do I need to continue to grow and to develop? And then reflection should be a tool to increase personal agency, that it is a way for young people to know themselves so that they can take ownership over their lives and their learning. All right, Dave. So if you don't mind, I'm always interested in the vibe check and getting a feel for where you all are. Take a moment to reflect and pause on everything that you just heard. And if you could share a word or a phrase that captures a key takeaway from what I just shared about high quality project-based learning. Oh, and thank you, Carolyn, for the link. I appreciate that. All right, lost my mouse here. Okay. We've got, okay, capacity, high engagement, intentional, ongoing reflection, collaboration between teacher and student. Yes. Yes, student and teacher empowerment, interactive and authentic, student-centered first, making students responsible. There's ownership, working with peers. Yeah. There's reflection. Okay, empathy, yes. Great. Oh, my goodness. Thank you all for that. That was a lot of engagement from you in the chat, which can be a little jarring sometimes in a webinar format. But thank you so much for sharing these. And I'm excited to share more with you as we proceed. Team?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Gina. And I love just listening to that. And, you know, with the work we do around the country, the idea of how important that process is for deep learning, you know, so much more than just a project. So thank you very much. So what we'd like to do now is ask Simone first, and then Ellie. You know, the idea here is, what did your school look like, you know, when you began your PBL journey? You know, what were some of the opportunities and some of the challenges, you know, that you faced? So Simone, would you like to share some of your ideas first?
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Dave, and hello, everyone. So this is a great question because we were tasked with trying to really engage our students. And I say task because we all know that we went through this little thing called the pandemic, right? So coming out of that, what were we going to do to bring our students back? How are we going to not just engage them, but re-engage them in the learning process? And we thought that this would be a fabulous way. We have been wanting to do project-based learning for a long time, or at least I have, right? And then just trying to get everyone on board. The easy thing about this for us was I'm at a school and everybody was of the same mindset where we needed to get students involved and re-engage them again in the learning process and have them be active. So one of the opportunities that we had was to do project-based learning. And so we said, let's just take it wholeheartedly, dive in, feed first, and see what comes of it. If we're looking at one of the opportunities and the challenges, and we're going to go into a little bit of that in a minute. Dave, can you go to the next slide? One of the things that we did was training and collaboration. So on these pictures, you'll see my teachers being trained along with myself being trained and others. And when I say others, we did it as a collaboration with other opportunity schools. I'm the principal at a continuation high school. And because we're so small, meaning that we only have like 3 to 4 teachers at each one of our school sites, one of the challenges was not just having this be for my teachers and students, but getting others involved, because then you have a network of people who you can go to, a network of teachers, teams, who students can even collaborate with, perhaps on projects across school sites. So that was one of the things that we really looked at in terms of how we were going to do this. And if you see there, we sort of looked, we called ourselves the champions, right? So we were looking at those 5 rings because we were 5 schools that were joining together to do this. I called my colleagues. This Defined Learning was presented to us at a principals meeting. And soon as I heard the presentation, I was like, okay, I'm on board. But I needed to get my teachers on board, right? So I went to them, I said, hey, these are some things we've been talking about. These are some things that we've been looking at. This is what I'm thinking and considering. What do you think? So it wasn't just a top down, like, hey, we're going to do PBL and it's going to work and we're going to make it work tomorrow, right? We had to get buy-in. The buy-in from my teachers was easy because we'd already been talking about this. But then now, how to extend that to others? So I called some of my colleagues who were also on that principals meeting and Zoom, and I said, hey, this is what I'm planning on doing. What do you guys think? Do you want to join in? What do your teachers think? Why don't you present it to them and see, what comes back? Well, again, we were all coming back in person and coming out of the pandemic. And we really knew that this was going to be a way for us to get our students involved and engaged and something fun. And I believe that people in the chat earlier mentioned, and Gina mentioned, interactive, authentic. We wanted to bring them together. This was a way for us to do that. If you go to the next slide. I'm sorry, go one more down. Thank you. So here you see where we have our teachers, other administrators. And again, I said that I was being trained alongside of them. So we were all being trained together. One of the things that we did was to come up with projects that we learned. And one of them was a backpack project. And you'll see that later on. So we as adults during our training, we designed a backpack. But then we had our students design a backpack when we took it back to our school site. One thing that, in terms of an opportunity, was to really have the students look at a series of project-based learning activities that they would like to do. So we started out with the backpack project initially, but then we also were looking at the how to create a food truck store, or there's so many different ones to choose from. So initially we went with our backpack project, took that to the students and had them design and utilize the backpack project-based learning project and activities. And we are continuing, and I say continuing from there because we're going to cycle back to that assignment and then go into having them created, meaning having it become an actual product where we're going to have it sewn and utilized so that they can go in from there. I think what I don't want to do is to take away from the next couple of slides, but just in terms of challenges was for us, a big challenge was just trying to find the time to collaborate. And what we decided we would do is that we would collaborate every Tuesday, and we would go back and utilize the project-based activities and discussions that we had on the Tuesday and implement them on Wednesday. Then come back and discuss and what worked and what didn't work and how we want to tweak it. So the challenge for us was just the time, finding the time to set aside to plan together. Because one of the beautiful things that we found was that, yes, the lessons are there, but you can make them your own. You can add to them, you can take away from them, and we wanted to expand and extend. So we needed to find that time for us to collaborate as a school site, but then also collaborate with our colleagues too, who are at different school sites, so that we could all come together and ask questions. And we set aside a series of meeting dates. We met over the summer, we met throughout the school year, we had different trainings over the summer, and we had additional trainings throughout the school year because we wanted to stay focused. We really needed to stay focused on what we were doing, what our goal was, and how our students were enjoying it. Did they even like it? You know, we can like things in our heads as an adult, but were the students having fun? So once they were having fun and they enjoyed it, then we knew we were okay.
Fantastic. And Simone, I must just point out, I had the opportunity to come and visit with you and all the educators. To me, the most powerful piece was all of the principals right alongside the teachers every step of the way, learning and guiding and understanding what your teachers were going through, both in planning and preparation and implementation. So cheers to you and your colleagues. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Dave. Thank you.
Absolutely. So Ellie, how about yourself? Would you mind sharing with us, please?
I love that there's going to be some trends and patterns to what Simone had said. So just to kind of reiterate that, but I first off want to thank you for this incredible opportunity to speak with you all today about our PBL journey. I also secretly want to thank you because someone is covering my 7th grade lunch duty. And if anybody knows grade 7s, I love them and I love lunch duty. And it's 7th graders in May. So thank you for that as well. I did want to start by actually setting the stage for my school. We are an urban middle school in the heart of Denver, Colorado. We are also so lucky to be beautifully representative of actually the Denver population. We have 30 to 40% multi-language learners, a newcomer program with students who are new to the country, and 20% of our students receive special education services. And then we also have 20% who receive gifted and talented services as well. So we are just so wonderfully diverse. We are a larger school. And so we just knew that we had to do something. Just like Simone had said, we began our journey right after schools reopened after the pandemic. Our school personally had slid downward slightly, and we didn't want to continue on that trajectory. So our huge opportunities came with this need for a pedagogy that we knew needed to develop our social emotional learning with our students, had a strong culture built in within this, and that also one that continued to develop strong academics. And we knew that if project-based learning was done well and effectively, it is just that. So like Simone is saying, like with this opportunity, we knew that there were several constraints that we also had to be able to consider. Like many public schools in a large metro area, we are personally held accountable to our district and state standardized tests. So we could not, move away from that. We knew that we were held to those constraints, as well as some other metrics such as attendance, student growth, and then as well as student and family satisfaction. We wanted to make sure that we took all of those pieces and those constraints into consideration. We also are a fairly new leadership team. With that, we have many veteran teachers who are absolutely amazing and had kids previously perform well. However, this was a completely new situation, and we knew that we needed our students to be able to develop and engage in ways that we hadn't been able to do yet. So this pandemic, had this huge shift in the needs for our students academically, socially, emotionally, and culturally. And we knew that we we're going to dive into this mind shift in order to have teachers take risks and to be able to grow professionally. So then before we move into our next question, I just want to say that this has helped us to think strategically and creatively when we were addressing these, I like to call them constraints, right? Because we were able to work within those.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ellie. And I love how you shared all the student-centered opportunities that project-based learning brings. Obviously, the academics is something we have to be so concerned about, but all those other future-ready skills to help our kids get ready. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. And then just as we kind of now look at how they made the shift to the PBL environment over time, I just wanted to remind you, if you have any questions, when we're finished today, we'll try to take a few questions. If you have any questions for Gina or Simone or Ellie, please put them in the chat. We'll try to grab a few of those. And with that said, Simone, how about if we come back to you and share how your school, how you made the shift towards a project-based learning environment.
Thanks again, Dave. And I shared a little bit of this earlier, but that big shift was having everyone trained and everyone getting in that same mindset in terms of this being good for students. For us, again, because we're such a small school set as an option school, again, with 3 to 4 teachers, our teachers teach everything. So they teach science, math, social studies, English, everything, including electives. This gave us an opportunity to do cross-curricular lessons. And with that, I believe it made it a little bit easier for us to shift to this, because it wasn't as difficult a sell, if you will, as it may have been. Because they teach everything and they're responsible for all subjects, this moving to project-based learning and making that shift was so much easier, because then it allowed us to look at all of those standards, those cross-curricular standards, look at those lessons that would be applicable to this. Now, not every lesson for us was applicable to every single subject, but perhaps we could have 2 of our teachers collaborate on a project, or 3 of them collaborate on a project. And it worked really, really well for us, because we're looking at the standards, and the standards are, again, connected with the lessons. It made us, and it allowed us to look at those and take a deep dive into those and say, okay, these are some of the things that we want to do. What matches that? But then for us, we also wanted it anchored in something. So for us, we did one of our big projects, and we did it as a school project, was to have it anchored in literature. And if you can go to the next slide, Dave. So for us, you saw our backpack project there, and you see us planning, but we also had it anchored. I believe I have one more slide after this. This is the one we did our school-wide project. So we were reading The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, and because it linked so nicely to everything, it linked to science, to, of course, literature, to social studies. And you'll see that art piece there that was created by one of our students. So our art teacher, who you'll see there, Ms. Richter is our art and science teacher, it linked to these things. So we were able to combine and collaborate and really work around this. The beautiful thing for us was that this is something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. And if you see there, you'll see the link to the PBL Defined Learning. I asked Defined Learning, I said, hey, this is an idea that I have. I really want to anchor a lesson in literature. Is there any way that we can collaborate to make this happen, so that not just my students and teachers have access to this, but that everyone else has access to this? So that link there is actually a link to the PBL Defined Learning project for The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. And so what we did was we actually had a showcase, and Gina mentioned a showcase earlier, where you're not just keeping everything insulated and it's just for you. Well, we shared it with the community. We sent this out. We shared it in a webinar. We shared it, a Zoom. We shared it as a part of our podcast. So students created poetry around this. They created a podcast where they actually interviewed the teachers on how they thought about doing PBL, and through this project as well. So we combined everything through the usage of this novel, but in a project-based learning vein. So we were able to cover the standards. We were able to have our teachers do a deep dive into their individual subjects, and it was a cross-curricular lesson and activity. So it was really important for us to have that span, again, because we're such a small school site, and you can do this with departments, you can do it with a few departments. So it makes it accessible for a small school, but also for a larger school as well. And Dave, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you for
Thank
sharing
you.
that. The Henrietta Lacks story. That was a really amazing, unique collaboration. And I feel like we learned a great deal from that. So thank you so much, Simone. And so let me go back, and Ellie, how about if you share with us how that shift came to be, especially with your new leadership team?
Absolutely. And again, like, I think this is so great to just hear different perspectives. And again, I hope you'll hear some themes and some of those patterns, but then also just some of the differences too, because we are a larger school and a larger school district as well. So like I had said, we had to think systemically and strategically and creatively about this huge endeavor, because it is a whole new set and a whole new pedagogy. And sometimes we know that our teachers can sometimes be hesitant to this. So we knew, and this was so important, and I know Simone had talked about this, that all good things take time. We weren't going to be able to just like throw out project-based learning and have everybody doing it by December. And so we were really strategic and we knew that we had to be incremental with our rollout of project-based learning. So the first thing we did, so as we're talking about resources, we backwards planned. And so what I'm going to tell you is last year, we actually called it our year zero. So that was like our first planning year. We were going to just get started and start that rollout. And what we did the previous year was we started with the end in mind, just like that great backwards planning. And our question was, what did we want all of our students to leave as graduates from our school in order? What do we want them to be able to know and do, right? What is that profile we have that we want all of our students as they leave our middle school to be able to know and do? So we first had that shared power and worked with our teachers at one of our first professional developments of the year to revamp our mission and vision. And it was so amazing because, you know, we had in mind, you know, SEL and culture, and that came out from our teachers. They knew, they had felt it and experienced how we needed to get back and have social, emotional, and culture along with our strong academics. And that rose to the top of our discussion. And that's how we were able to come together and actually say, this is our new and improved vision for our school. So that was our first thing. That was our big backwards plan, right? This is where we want our students to be. Then we were able to move forward from that. From there, as a leadership team, we aligned this new vision to high quality project-based learning. So everything we did was in alignment and was explicitly explained with our teachers. So we explained how high quality project-based learning is with our unified school improvement plan, goes along with our evaluation system, which teachers love, you know, so it actually worked all together and showing that alignment. And it's like, this is not another thing. This is going to help all the things. So then we set high expectations too, but we set realistic ones, right? Because we wanted to have this be incremental. So we set the expectation that all 100% of our teachers would implement one project during the year that would actually be showcased at the end of your exhibition. Woo, that's a good word. So just like Simone had said, like that is, we needed it to go beyond the four walls of the classroom. So this held purpose and accountability for our teachers and our students. So everyone knew, hey, we're going to be delving into some of these projects and we're going to showcase this at the end of the year. And then we were intentional about holding our teachers to those high expectations, but we wanted to make sure we were supporting them the entire way through, modeling of that warm demander of where we care about everybody. If you know Zaretta Hammond, she's amazing, and really just making sure that we have those high expectations and support along the way. So to get our teachers ready, I have to tell you, we used the power of our innovative and early adopter teachers to help gain that traction during that year 0 for project-based learning. I don't know how many of you have actually heard of, there's an amazing YouTube video that's called like Lessons Learned from the First Follower. I would highly suggest at the end, go find it, because there's a video. It's so cool if you have the opportunity. So the gist is that there are innovators who are, they're like, people are like, oh, wow, I don't know if I can do that. They're looked at skeptically. But then once you have this first follower, those early adopters go along with it, it is just a matter of time before everybody else is going to join in the fun and be a part of this huge collective encompassing project-based learning. So what we did was we made sure that our crew of innovators and early adopters were trained in high quality project-based learning. So we had probably 8 to 10 of our teachers so that they felt good within the framework, felt good about taking those risks. And the best thing was it spread. And so they were talking to one another about the projects. The kids were talking in the hallways about the projects, which was amazing. So then our other teachers started catching on. The other piece was that we made sure our professional development was aligned, again, with our vision, the evaluations, the framework, so that teachers could, again, see that purpose in what we were doing. So that was year 0. Now moving on to this year, which is our year 1, our technical first year. I'm so excited that we were able to get all of our teachers trained in project-based learning. So now, like, we had our first 10, they still took it again and learned something. They're like, wow, it was actually better taking it the second time, because they were able to go deeper and revise those first projects. One thing I'm going to say, I hope you learn from any of my mistakes or issues, that we recognized with that first year 0 that we did not ground ourselves enough in the standards. And we had to make sure that our Common Core, our NGSS, were at the core of the project, that those learning goals were right there. And so we made sure that these were front and center, and those were consistently taught and assessed throughout. So it did not become a dessert project, that it actually was that red thread that went all the way through. And then we had a higher expectation, where we had teachers who developed and implemented 2 projects, so once each semester. And again, we did that consistent and ongoing professional development that was aligned to the specific strategies. That's another thing that we learned, is that we needed to be able to model the specific strategies for project management, peer feedback, and reflection, so that teachers actually could feel what it was like for that protocol or whatever it was. And then we were able to reflect on how they could modify it to fit their teaching style and their students' needs. I know I just talked a lot at you, but that was really what we had done. And now we're, moving forward. And I'm so excited to be going into ending year 1 and starting year 2.
Ellie, you used the phrase a dessert project. Could you expand on that a little bit, please?
Oh, absolutely. It's just the difference, just like Gina had talked about earlier, it's the difference between the doing a project at the end where the students do, they learn all the content, then they do this really fun project at the end. And I have to tell you, as a teacher, I was a habit to this until I learned about project-based learning, whereas an actual high quality project-based learning is where the project is the driver, right? Just like Gina had said, that is the driver of the learning, and that is what's consistently shown as the purpose for their learning, the content.
Thank you. And I also just have to tell you, and a couple people in the chat also indicated, I've used the first follower video on numerous occasions, and it is hysterical and it is powerful. And after people stop laughing and you start to talk about it, it's an aha moment. So thank you very much for sharing that. So Simone, Ellie, thank you both for sharing your stories. Gina, you and I have been kind of hanging out here on the edges, listening to Simone and Ellie. What were some of your aha moments?
Yeah, so I want to take a moment to celebrate a number of things that I heard in the conversation with Ellie and Simone. So one is cheers to modeling the process. So one of the really wicked awesome, I'm not from Boston, but I love saying that. One of the really wicked awesome things about project-based learning is that the process itself can be used to bring teachers on board to the pedagogy itself. Now, effective professional learning should model the process that you intend for teachers to be implementing with young people. That is true. And project-based learning is uniquely positioned to do that in really meaningful ways. We have to remember that, many of us as students ourselves did not necessarily experience project-based learning as a learner, right? And so often we are teaching the way that we learned as a student. So that can be kind of the default, right? Like you parent the way your parents parented you. I'm learning. But cheers to modeling the process, because that's an engaging and meaningful way to help teachers really understand what young people are experiencing when project-based learning is happening. It's a way to pressure test the initiative to like see where the gaps are for teacher learning and needs. So that way, and where the bright spots are, which I heard a lot come up too, like how can we leverage the work that the team is already doing, the gifts that they have. I also want to elevate collaboration came up a lot in this conversation and how these two incredible leaders were engaging their teams. So the collaboration looked like ongoing conversation about what the vision is. There was co-creation of the vision, protected, dedicated, infrastructural time created for teachers to have conversations and plan about project-based learning. And then that there is a loving accountability measure in place to make sure that that is happening. We are all busy people. It is easy to let something slip off our radar, and accountability can be an act of love. So whether that is you come back to that next staff meeting and you show what you did last week, or we're going to have this one public event, this one showcase where everyone has to share their project, accountability can be an act of love. And that means we have to do it with love as well. Social and emotional learning came up. I know we're talking about HQ PBL, but how a student understands themselves and others is critical to their development and certainly to their success in project-based learning, because learning is not happening just individually within a silo. So I want to celebrate and elevate that. I know that there's a number of blogs. Undefined's blog around social and emotional learning. So if you could check those out, that would be really incredible. And then I think, oh goodness, there were so many gems. I think one other thing I want to mention, and I know it came up as a question, is creating partnerships. I heard that the team was talking about that, and this happened in different ways. So one, Simone talked about creating partnerships with other schools. I think that is a really incredible way to inspire and also like share the load, and to create some like motivation, like we're working on this together. That was really beautiful. And then there's also the work around creating partnerships with the community in order to develop projects. That might be a question we explore in the Q&A, but yeah, just really, really lovely stuff, you all. Thank you. It was an honor to hear your journeys, and very exciting.
Thank you, Gina. I
Thank
love
you.
accountability. I have never heard that phrase.
It
That is
can be.
pretty cool.
It really
No, I agree. I'm not discounting it. I'm just saying that was a really nice new phrase that I've heard. So thank you for sharing. So Ellie and Simone, we have a couple of questions. We have a few minutes left, so let's dig into them. So the first question is, how do you get your teachers to make the switch from projects to high quality project-based learning? And Ellie, how about if we let you go first?
Absolutely. I think one of the best things to do is use I love this phrase, collective wisdom of your staff. So just like modeling that peer feedback, it's just like Gina had talked about, is having that designated professional development time to have teachers listen to one another and give one another feedback in an authentic capacity. It tends, that peers tend to be able to listen in a different capacity and are willing to take those risks in that safe environment. And just knowing that you can explicitly, I think this is one of the things that I have learned, is to make sure that I'm explicit in calling out that you want them to take this risk, and we are here with you the whole way. And we're here to support them as they're taking that risk. So I think that's one great way to be able to do that.
Awesome. And Ellie, as I turn to Simone, can I ask you a technological favor? One of the attendees has asked if we could share a link to the first follower. Would you be able to potentially hunt that down and put it into the chat, please?
I think some people already had done it for me. I think it's
Right,
amazing.
there you go. Well, then that will already be in the chat. So Simone, how did you get your teachers to begin to make the switch from projects to high quality project-based learning?
Well, I like that Ellie mentioned collective wisdom. So at the beginning of every school year, we read the article on collective efficacy. So we do it faithfully every year. And then I ask teachers their why. And they share their why and I share mine. Depending upon the year, sometimes your why may change, but our why is always student-centered. So we look at our collective efficacy article. We go away with takeaways. What is something that stood out to you this year? So we start our year out with that. And then that for us is how we, it was an easy switch for us. Again, I said earlier that we were coming out of the pandemic. We knew we wanted to focus on student engagement. We knew we wanted to do some of those things, but that collective efficacy article always centers us because we know that we're here doing the same thing for the same reason and that students are at the center. Our focus is always on students. So that switch for us was fairly easy. It may not be as easy for some, but for us it was, but we knew where our center was. And once we knew where our core was, and because we always know where our core is, it grounds us. So it keeps us there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And can I also ask you, and Simone, I see you're typing an answer, so I'll let you go back to typing. But Susan is asking about some of the projects that you've done, the classes that were involved, the standards and how they were addressed. Simone, maybe you can share.
Sure.
And then Ellie.
Sure. So for us, we did a couple of projects. We did the backpack project, and we also did the project around the immortal life of Henrietta Lacks, and we did those as a school. However, some of our teachers wanted to venture off and try a couple of other things that they thought matched with their subject matter a little bit better. But in terms of the standards, what we did was we focused on the key standards from the subject. So the ones that we did as a school-wide project, we looked at the subjects that it would cover, or that we thought it would cover, and then we matched that up to the standards. So what key standards would be covered with this project? So what are those key ELA standards? What are those key social studies standards? What are those key science standards? And so forth and so on. So we looked at that because we have to be certain that we're still covering the standards and we're still teaching our students, right? So project-based learning isn't void of teaching and it's not void of learning. It's just bringing all those things together. And for us, as a school-wide project, we thought that, okay, this is something that we can really get into that will cover multiple subjects and multiple standards. And so that's how we did it with that in terms of the projects. And they were asking also what classes were involved. Well, that was all of our classes. So we did it, again, school-wide, looking at those standards, those key standards, and those key standards across the subject areas. One thing that we wanted to make certain that we consistently did was have students write. I love English and I love writing. And we wanted to make sure that our students were continuously writing. One thing that we found also when they came back is, students text, right? They're so used to texting. And with Zoom and with so many other factors, they weren't writing as much. So we wanted to make sure that we were having them write. What do you think? Writing across the curriculum. We wanted to make certain that every student in every class was writing, either giving the reflection, writing out their thoughts about a math problem, but incorporating writing in every way, shape, and form. And then we tied it to that technological piece. Someone mentioned Future Ready. Well, all of our teachers here, including myself, are Future Ready certified. We did that during the pandemic, guys. So we all had new learnings. So that's our bell, excuse me. We all had new learnings, but we're all Future Ready certified. So we wanted to make certain that we utilize those skills that we learned, and we took that back to our students as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Simone.
Thank
Ellie,
you.
how about you and your school?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just talk about two of the projects that are some of my favorites. As a former science teacher, one of the ones that our school has done is after the pandemic, there was a huge need. So we looked at the standards first, and then we also looked at student interest. And so we surveyed our students to see, what do you want to know about? And our science students were really interested to understand if the disinfectants actually worked. And so we had students going around our school, swabbing lockers, swabbing doorknobs, and testing to see what kind of bacteria was growing. And then they tested those different disinfectants. But it didn't end there, right? So at that point, they either created, so that tech ready and that future ready, some students decided to do a PSA on, hey, these are the disinfectants that works. These are the ones that really didn't work according to our data. Some wrote to health inspectors within DPS to actually have them understand, hey, these are the products that we should be purchasing for our schools. And then some actually wrote to the companies themselves and got swag back, which was hilarious because they're like, hey, your product doesn't work. But then they're like, hey, give us some coupon, here's some coupons to buy more. It was hilarious. But it was just that authenticity and that choice in our students, but still grounding in the standards of understanding microorganisms, understanding labs and how to organize data tables and to be able to read those data tables, to be able to write to an authentic audience as well. Another one that we just finished up, our 8th graders just finished reading Unbroken. And that I like to say that text can be grounded as a case study for whatever you would like the students to be working on. And this was a survival story. So we had each of our students write their continuation speech based on how they survived and thrived in middle school. And so the top students are actually going to be reading their speeches at our continuation ceremony in a week. And so I'm really excited about those two projects. Oh, and I do want to address, there was a question in the chat about tests or standardized and how is it with marginalized versus not. We are in a very diverse school. And I wanted to say that our language arts team, our 6th grade language arts team, was an early adopter of PBL that year 0. We were actually able to show positive results with our 6th grade ELA being the early adopters. Over 70% of our students met or exceeded expectations on our district assessment that we don't write. And so that just shows the power there. And it was actually also very closely aligned with our state assessment. And so we were able to showcase that for some of our teachers who may have been more skeptical. And we were really proud of that because, it's, if you build it, they will come. And so that's what we were able to do.
That's awesome. And a Field of Dreams reference to boot. All right. Well, listen, we have time for one more question, and it's actually a really great question, bringing in the arts. Simone, I'll ask you to kind of reply first. I'm thinking about a couple of your educators in particular.
Yes.
But basically, it's the idea about the cross curriculum and how to bring art in a meaningful way. And if you read the chat, you'll see that that's where the meaningful comes from. But maybe you could share a little bit,
Sure.
Simone, and then Ellie, you can bring us home.
So my art teacher is actually one of the driving forces behind our project-based learning here. And we all sit down together, we look at the standards, and we look at what projects or activities or types of ways we can include art in every single thing we do. So I think I mentioned The Immortal Life of Henry Lax earlier. This is actually one of the print pieces that, I don't know if you can see there, that one of our students did in terms of the arts. So they, Ms. Richter, who you saw in one of those earlier slides, was actually designing some art lessons to go with the instructional pieces for English and science and social studies, because everyone is working together. We look at those key standards, but you have the opportunity to not just utilize what defined learning has, but also add on to it, change, make it your own. And then talk about what that looks like in your particular subject area so that everybody understands. If you're looking at it from an art perspective, talking about it from well, how can I bring in the arts? Are we looking at art history? Are we looking at creating a project? Are we looking at paintings, posters? What are we looking at in terms of doing with the arts? So what does that look like from the art teacher's perspective? And then looking at the overall lesson or unit or whatever project, PBL project that you're doing, what is that going to look like? What is that end product? And I think Gina said it earlier. What is that end product? And Ellie, I like the analogy of the dessert. What is that dessert? So what toppings are you going to put on? If I'm having a sundae, what sprinkles are you bringing in from each of the subject areas? What are you putting on it? What you have chocolate syrup could be the art. Something else could be the sprinkles. What are you bringing to it? And deciding what lesson, art activities, standards you're going to cover, and then sharing that out with everyone so that it's not done in a silo and everyone understands the why behind it and how it's connected. So that's one of the things that we're doing. And I believe that Dave has mentioned in terms of the art. So Ms. Richter is also supporting that in helping design some of these lessons that include art. And with that STEAM, that A in there, right, for that STEAM focus for that art. So we want to make certain that every subject matter is included. But again, not every PBL will lend itself to every subject, but for those that do, you can utilize it. And then you can also add to it from your subject matter. I hope that helps.
Absolutely. Ellie?
Yes. Oh, thank you. I get so excited. So just a little bit, my dad's a retired art teacher on science. And so it's both are always in my brain all the time. And so I love the questions and asking how to incorporate art. I think one of the best things is when you have intentional time to talk about the projects and how one can assist in the other is where you're going to have with that discussion is going to be that authentic building. So for example, there was one science teacher who was creating a podcast and our music director said, my students can create the sound effects for your podcast. And so it became this natural PBL unit. Was so amazing with that. Another one that I am excited to kind of discuss is a project called Connect, like where one of the teachers I have talked with, he's a colleague of mine, works with a bike company, and they were looking at the science and the kinetics of bikes and being able to recycle and reuse this equipment in other ways. And so they developed kinetic art based on those bicycle parts that weren't going to be used. So they're upcycling. So the students had to know the science, they had to know design and art and how things would move. And it was just this beautiful coming together of the arts and sciences. And so I know that, like I said, Defined is really coming together to develop some really cool STEAM units and lessons just like that.
Absolutely. Listen, we have run out of time. We went a couple minutes over, but well worth it. And obviously, the four of us would probably stay for another hour and answer questions and have a project-based learning conversation. But what I'd like to do is I would just like to thank Gina, Simone, and Ellie for their time, their wisdom, and their sharing. Thank you all so much. And thank all of you for taking the time. You've all spent the entire hour with us, and that's amazing. So thank you, and cheers to all of you. Just to remind you, you'll be getting, a recording of today's presentation, probably tomorrow, in the next 24 hours. It'll be emailed to all registrants, and it's also going to be posted on our site under the resources page. You'll also be getting a certificate of attendance for your live participation. So with that, on behalf of Defined, I would just like to say thank you to you all. I hope you all have the best of the school year remaining and get a chance to catch your breath and relax a little this summer. So take care, best wishes, and thank you all. So we're officially done. Take care. Bye-bye.